Leveling up, probably, or at least what should be the main pillar of this Conservative government. After all, the 2019 manifesto has been continuously reaffirmed by all the prime ministers that have, well, shall we say, taken over since Boris Johnson. Liz Truss said, yes, the 2019 manifesto is what our guiding principle. We are going to continue to fulfill Boris Johnson's legacy. Rishi Sunak, when he came in, said, I am not going to deviate from the 2019 manifesto. And yet, as we have said continuously, the main central pillar of the 2019 manifesto, besides getting Brexit done, was this idea that we are going to finally level up the country, that we are going to go to those left behind communities and we are going to level them up. And of course, who was the guy in charge of all this? It was none other than Michael Gove, the minister himself for leveling up. And bear in mind, when the book came out, you may remember the whole idea and the action plan for leveling up, how they were going to do it when it came out. The first part and the first sort of two chapters, as you may remember, were kind of shocking because it was a flat out admission that they had failed, that there had been no really coherent and industrial strategy to go about leveling up, that there was no joined up strategy like a UK wide strategy, and that this is what the government really needed to do. And this is how the government needed to do it, what it should do, and what it wanted to do. And then, of course, you got onto chapter 3, which was the budget. And as many people said, that's when Rishi Sunak stepped in and, shall we say, started taking the scalpel to the figures and started slashing everything he could. So meanwhile, you'd had those first two chapters saying, we need to spend this amount of money. And then you would turn on to chapter 3, being somewhat very hopeful that, oh my, does the government actually get this about leveling up, that it actually needs to do this? And then you would turn to chapter 3, and there you would have clearly Rishi Sunak going all over it, basically providing this whole leveling up campaign with, well, nothing. Basically providing them pennies instead of pounds. And the leveling up has really officially failed. However, in what seems to be a very desperate move from Michael Gove coming into this government at almost, well, 3 minutes to midnight, Michael Gove seems to have a plan. So before we get into Michael Gove and how he found his new groove, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, as always, there is the YouTube thank you button, the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, you can buy me coffee at the link down below, where you can, well, buy me coffee. So as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So as always, let's crack on with this story. So this seemed to almost come out of nowhere. When you have a government that very nervously decided to cut its housing targets because it was so worried about its shires being, well, at least losing even more support in its shires, even though everyone in around there knows that they need houses built. But the big problem always becomes is these people, when you go to these shires, it's not just that they need houses, it's they need infrastructure. They need to have the roads widened. They need to have the sewage put in place. They need new schools. There's a ton of extra stuff they need, not just the placing of new houses. And not only that, but it was somewhat became very politically toxic, where the government was going to build these on greenbelt land. So as a result, this whole initiative to build all these housing has completely fallen to pieces. But Michael Gove, apparently in private, is the most enthusiastic person in the cabinet about building social housing. Now, of course, he's never publicly come out and said this, that this is what the government should do, it's what its priority should do, or even come up with some sort of plan to build all these social housing. However, Michael Gove's new plan is to not level up the north or level up these left behind communities. Instead, he's going to take an already prosperous city in Cambridge and essentially build over a quite significant number of houses in this area, as well as invest into new technology and digital spaces in Cambridge. Now, this is not what a lot of people signed up to when they generally voted to leveling up, believing those claims of Boris Johnson, because this is a town in the southeast that's already very, very wealthy, very, very prosperous already. So Cambridge will be like, excellent, great, thanks, Gove. But in the meanwhile, this will do nothing really for the North. And as a lot of people have said in response to this, there's places like Sheffield, Birmingham, uh, Wolverhampton, Blackpool, which would have been far, far, far more appreciative and would have a better economic benefit for these towns had Gove used one of those towns, and it would have still kept to their leveling up promise if he had decided to choose one of those cities. But no, instead he's chosen Cambridge. And of course, he's used the terms of, well, Cambridge is going to become the Silicon Valley of the UK. And trust me, it's not the first time we've heard this phrase said before. This place is going to be the new Silicon Valley of the UK. I pretty much think that almost every single city in the UK has at some point been called the next Silicon Valley of the UK. But this is Gove's plan. And ultimately, it's bizarre that you would get this type of plan so late in a parliament when especially the benefits of this are only going to be felt at least a decade later. Because it's going to take a long time to obviously build these houses and to get these investments in. You have to question, why on earth was Gove not pursuing this 3 years ago? And maybe it is because the party is in such a state that he's able to to actually do this and to get away with this. Might also explain the reason why he has chosen Cambridge of all places, being in the southeast, rather than choosing somewhere in the north. And of course, the fact that he's not building on greenbelt land, he's building on brownfield sites here, which of course will add to the developers' problems, because of course they've got to clean up the site first. Whatever was previously used there, they've got to clean all that up, so that's going to eat into their margins. And yet we still don't know if all these new houses in Cambridge that is going to be built by this new Gove plan are actually any going to be socially housing. Now, we've said Gove is apparently meant to be in private, meant to be very enthusiastic about building social housing. Whether these new housing developments in Cambridge will turn out to be social housing, we don't know. But what can we say? This is, quote unquote, leveling up in the way that no one signed up for it. Like I say, this was meant to be targeting the left behind towns, those towns that have been ignored for years. And it wouldn't be a town in, the south, an already prosperous one in such as Cambridge, even though Cambridge is property value wise very, very expensive. So certainly this will affect in many ways the property prices and increasing sort of the pool of housing that is available. But we'll see what happens in the future. But like I say, it's going to be at least a decade before we really see any of the effects of this plan. And to be honest, while this has been, probably going to be welcomed by a lot of people down there, there's going to be a lot of people who I think up north who genuinely actually believed in these promises to level up, I think it's going to disappoint a lot of people. But then again, Gove could have chosen somewhere like Sheffield that would have been, shall we say, far more economical and also fed into whole Rishi Sunak's thing of achieving growth. So we'll see if this comes to pass. But needless to say, it's bizarre how this Conservative minister seems to have found his groove. Although, to be honest, as we said, it's 2 minutes to midnight and 3 years too late. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.